Hello, welcome to the Learn English Lab. Today's podcast is Mastering the Art of Advanced English.
It's great to be here. And this topic, I have to say, is one I'm really passionate about. It hits on this very specific frustration point for so many learners.
It really does. Today, we're digging into a roadmap that's, it's not for everyone. This isn't for the person just starting out trying to learn how to ask for the bathroom.
Right. This is for the person who's already put in the hours.
Exactly. You're functional. You can order a meal. You can probably get through a work meeting. You can watch a movie and get the gist of it.
You're surviving. You're not, drowning anymore.
But you're stuck. You're looking at that next level, that advanced tier, and the gap between I can get by and I sound totally natural just feels enormous.
That's the infamous intermediate plateau. It's a real place, and it's a frustrating one. You feel like you're pedaling the bike, but the chain has come off. You're not moving forward.
And the material we're looking at today frames this transition in a way I found really compelling. It's not just about learning more words.
No, not at all. It's a fundamental rewiring of how you think, how you express your personality, and honestly, how you connect with people.
I really like that. The notes use this great analogy. Beginner English is for survival, right? Don't starve. Intermediate English is for function, do your job.
Yeah.
But advanced English is about shining in subtlety.
Subtlety, that is the perfect word. Think of it this way. Intermediate level lets you understand the menu. You see chicken, rice, salad, you get it.
Okay, straightforward.
Advanced level is understanding the sarcasm in a dry British sitcom.
That's a whole other level of difficulty.
It's incredibly difficult because sarcasm is not about the literal definition of the words. It's about tone, context, the shared cultural understanding. It's the difference between decoding a message and actually feeling the emotion behind it.
It's moving from, I hope they understood my point, to I know exactly the impression I just made.
Precisely. It's about intention.
So before we get into the how-to part of this, we should probably define what we're even talking about. The material brings up the CEFR, the Common European Framework. What level are we actually aiming for here?
We're really looking at the top two tiers, C1 and C2. So if B2 is that upper intermediate stage where you're pretty comfortable, C1 is where you start to feel, powerful.
Powerful, I like that.
At C1, you can handle demanding, complex texts. You can express yourself fluently without that awkward pause while you're mentally scrolling through your vocabulary list.
Oh, that pause. I know that pause.
Yeah.
You can see the person's eyes kind of glaze over while their brain is buffering.
That's the one.
Yeah.
At C1, that buffering really starts to disappear.
Yeah.
And then you have C2.
Mountaintop.
The holy grail, for sure. C2 is near native proficiency. This is where you're not just understanding what's said, you're grasping what's implied. You have total flexibility. You can shift from, say, a formal academic discussion to a casual argument about sports in a pub, and you do it effortlessly.
Okay, but I have to ask the question I think a lot of people are thinking. Why? If I'm a B2, I can do my job, I can travel. Why on earth would I put in the, thousands of hours it must take to get to C2? It feels like a case of diminishing returns.
That is a completely fair question. It's a massive investment of time and energy, but the benefits, they go way beyond just, showing off with fancy words.
Okay.
Obviously, you've got the career side of things. We're talking promotions in multinational companies, the ability to freelance for anyone in the world, better negotiation power. That's the easy stuff.
Sure, the money aspect.
But the research points to something much deeper. We're talking about cognitive health.
The idea that learning a language is like a workout for your brain.
A serious workout. There's a lot of research, including some great work from the University of Edinburgh, showing that high-level bilingualism actually changes the physical structure of your brain. It strengthens the executive functions.
What does that mean in, plain English?
It means you get better at problem solving. Your focus improves. Your ability to switch between tasks gets sharper. And this is the big one, it can actually delay the onset of cognitive decline and conditions like dementia.
So you're not just learning English. You are literally building a more resilient, younger brain.
You're building what's called a cognitive reserve. It's like having a backup generator for your mind. And then there's the personal side. I think this is the most important one.
Go on.
If you're stuck at that intermediate level, you're often forced to present a simplified version of yourself to the world.
Ouch.
Yeah,
that one stings a little. A simplified version of yourself.
It's true, isn't it? In your native language, you might be sarcastic or deeply empathetic or incredibly witty. But in your second language, if you don't have the tools, you're often just polite.
Yeah.
Factual.
You're the person who just nods and says, that is interesting because you don't have the vocabulary to articulate a complex counter-argument.
Exactly. Reaching an advanced level allows you to be your full, messy, complicated self. It allows you to be you.
Okay, I'm sold on the why. So let's pivot to the how. Because the standard advice you always hear is just practice more. But the material we've got suggests that's actually kind of bad advice.
It is terrible advice, or at least it's incomplete advice. And this brings us right into the psychology of learning. We have to talk about something called deliberate practice. This comes from the research of psychologists like Anders Ericsson.
So how is that different from just regular practice? I mean, I practice driving my car every single day.
And have you become a Formula One driver?
Definitely not. If anything, I've probably gotten lazier, developed bad habits.
Exactly. What you're doing is rote practice. You're on autopilot, you got good enough to handle your daily commute, and then your improvement flatlined. The same thing happens with language.
Right.
You get good enough to do your job, and you stop pushing. You stop seeking out situations that are difficult for you. Deliberate practice is the exact opposite. It's focused, goal-oriented effort where you systematically identify your weaknesses and attack them.
So if I'm already really comfortable talking about sports, having another conversation about sports isn't really practice.
It's maintenance. It's not growth. Growth happens when you force yourself to discuss, say, the ethics of artificial intelligence, and you realize you don't have the words. That friction, that struggle, that's where the learning is.
And that ties into the other big psychological piece, right? The growth mindset.
Carol Dweck's work, yes,
Right.
This is crucial. So many intermediate learners stop progressing because they become afraid of making mistakes. They've built up this identity of being good at English, and they don't want to risk looking stupid by trying a complex sentence and failing.
The ego gets in the way.
The ego is the #1 enemy of fluency. A learner on the path to advanced has to fundamentally reframe their relationship with errors. An error isn't a failure, it's a piece of data.
The little signpost.
It's a little red flag on your personal map that says, hey, dig here. There's something important buried right here. You have to learn to embrace the stumble.
Embrace the stumble. I like that. Okay, so before we can fix our mistakes, we have to find them. And this is the tricky part, isn't it? We are really bad at judging our own abilities.
We are notoriously unreliable narrators of our own skills. There's a story in the research that is it's almost painful to read, but it's so illuminating. It's the anecdote about the Brazil student.
Oh, this story is fantastic. You have to tell it, because I think a lot of people will see a bit of themselves in this guy.
Okay, so picture this man. He's from Brazil, living in the States. He is, by all accounts, the life of the party. Super charismatic, super social. He can go to a happy hour, tell stories, crack jokes, flirt. His conversational flow is just incredible.
So in his mind, he's thinking, I've made it. I have mastered English.
100%. He walks into a formal language assessment with all the confidence in the world. He sits down, starts chatting with the assessor, how's your day? Great weather we're having. And she's impressed. She's thinking, okay, this guy is C1, maybe even C2.
But then she springs the trap.
The trap is sprung. She slides a printed article across the desk. It's an opinion piece from the New York Times, nothing crazy academic, but it's dense. She says, please read this out loud and tell me what the author is arguing.
Oh, no.
He reads the first sentence and he just freezes. He hits a phrase like existential dread.
And his party vocabulary doesn't cover that one.
Not even close. He kind of smiles awkwardly and skips over it. Then he hits an idiom, something like kick the can down the road.
Which, if you translate it literally, makes absolutely no sense.
He's sitting there trying to figure out why the government is playing a game with a garbage can. And then comes a complex sentence with multiple clauses. Within 2 paragraphs, his confidence is just gone. It evaporated. He's stumbling. He's guessing at words.
That's a brutal reality check.
It was devastating for him in the moment. The assessment came back, and he wasn't C1 or C2. He was a very, very strong B2 upper intermediate. He had fantastic fluency, the speed and flow, but his accuracy and his lexical range were actually quite limited.
But here's the key part of the story. That assessment wasn't a failure. It was a diagnosis.
That is it, exactly. Once he had that data, once he knew he was a B2, he stopped practicing what he was already good at, which was casual conversation.
Right.
And he started doing the hard work. Reading complex texts, learning idioms, studying grammar. He got to C1 in 6 months because he finally knew which mountain he needed to climb.
So for our listeners, how do you get that New York Times moment without necessarily going for a formal, expensive assessment?
You need to find sources of objective data. A standardized test is the most obvious one. I know nobody loves taking tests, but they are a very clear mirror. If you're taking the TOEFL, you should be aiming for a score over 100. For IELTS, you're looking for a 7.5 or higher.
And for those who don't want to shell out the money for a test,
you can create your own feedback loop. Start what the material calls a language journal, but be specific. Don't just write, I studied for an hour. Track your failures.
So like I was listening to a podcast about economics and my brain completely shut off after 5 minutes.
Yes. Or my colleagues made a joke about biting the bullet at lunch and I had to pretend I understood it. Those moments of confusion, that's gold. That's your personal curriculum.
The notes also mention making your own rubric.
I love this idea. Create a simple scale, say 1 to 5, for the core skills. Fluency, how smooth is your speech? Pronunciation, how clear are you? Vocabulary, how wide is your range? And grammar, how accurate are you?
Okay.
You might rate yourself a 5 on fluency, like our friend from Brazil, but you might honestly have to give yourself a 2 on grammar. Seeing that imbalance on paper helps you set smart goals.
Specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound.
Right. You stop saying, I need to get better at English, and you start saying, this month I will learn 30 new collocations related to business and use them in 3 different conversations. That's a mission you can actually accomplish.
That feels much more manageable. Okay, speaking of words, let's dive into vocabulary, because this is where I think a lot of people just feel overwhelmed.
It's a mountain, a huge one. A comfortable intermediate speaker, a B2, gets by on, maybe 2,500 to 3,000 words? And that covers the vast majority of everyday life.
Sure.
But an advanced learner, a C1 or C2, you're looking at a vocabulary of 8,000 words or more.
And that's intimidating. But it's not just about memorizing a dictionary, is it? It's about the type of words you're learning.
It is entirely about quality over quantity. It's about learning words that give you precision, emotion, and nuance. The guide suggests thematic learning, which I think is a brilliant approach.
So instead of random word lists, you pick a theme and go deep.
Exactly. Pick a field that's relevant to you. If you work in tech, you can't get by with computer thingy. You need to know algorithm, bandwidth, latency, neural network, augmented reality.
And in business, you're not just working together, you're fostering synergy. You're not just getting your money back, you're calculating the ROI.
Or in law, you need litigation and affidavit. In medicine, prognosis, and pathology. These words aren't just vocabulary. They're like a key to a private club. They signal to other professionals, I belong here, I speak your language.
They grade your credibility.
Instantly. But beyond these technical terms, I think the real secret weapon for sounding advanced is mastering collocations.
Collocations. The things that make English so frustrating because they defy logic.
They're completely illogical. Collocations are just words that have formed a strong friendship. They like to hang out together. For example, we say, you make a decision.
Right.
We never say you do a decision.
But grammatically, do a decision isn't wrong. It follows all the rules of subject, verb, object.
It follows the rules of grammar, but it violates the unspoken rules of natural usage. If a learner says, I did a decision, I'll understand them perfectly, but I will also know instantly that they are not a native speaker. It just sounds clunky.
Give us some more examples.
Weather is a great source. We have heavy rain, but we don't say strong rain.
Even though rain can feel very strong.
It can. Or think about intensifiers. We say something is utterly ridiculous or utterly devastating, but it would sound very strange to say something is utterly wonderful.
So utterly has a negative personality.
It does. Or stark contrast. We don't say sharp contrast nearly as often. Learning these pairings is what makes your speech flow.
And then you have the big ones, idioms and phrasal verbs.
Yeah.
The notes call them game changers.
Because they are. They are the soul of informal spoken English. If you can correctly use an idiom like bite the bullet.
Meaning to face a difficult situation with courage.
Right. Or spill the beans for revealing a secret, or hit the nail on the head for being exactly right. It just adds so much color and personality to your speech. It makes it sound less like a textbook.
And phrasal verbs. Oh, phrasal verbs.
Look, on behalf of all native English speakers, I apologize for phrasal verbs. They are an absolute nightmare.
Put off, put up, put down, put on.
And they all mean completely different things. You put off a meeting, you put up with a noisy neighbor, you put down a book, and you put on a coat. You just have to learn each one as its own unique vocabulary item. There's no shortcut.
I want to talk about a potential trap here, though. The trap of using big, fancy words just for the sake of it.
The thesaurus trap. This is so important. As you start learning more advanced words, you discover all these exciting synonyms. You learn that elated and jubilant are synonyms for happy.
Right.
So you walk into the office on a Monday, your colleague asks, hey, how was your weekend? And you puff out your chest and say, I am jubilant.
And your colleague slowly backs away.
Exactly. Because jubilant is the word you use when your country wins the World Cup or when a peace treaty is signed. It is far too strong for describing a nice weekend. In that situation, you sound less fluent than if you had just said, it was great.
So advanced vocabulary isn't about using the biggest word. It's about using the most appropriate word.
That's the whole game. Nuance is appropriateness. Knowing that happy is the right word 99% of the time, and jubilant is for that very specific 1%, that's mastery.
That's a brilliant distinction. Okay, let's shift gears from the words themselves to the structure that holds them together, grammar. But we're not talking about basic verb tenses here. The material calls this section the art of elegance.
I love that framing. Because when you're a beginner, grammar feels like a set of rules you have to obey or you fail. It's a prison. But at the advanced level, grammar becomes a toolkit. It's a set of sophisticated instruments you can use to create effects, to manage focus, to build rhythm and style.
So let's talk about one of those scary tools, the subjunctive mood.
The subjunctive. Yes, it's becoming a bit rarer in casual speech, but in formal writing and speaking, it's still a clear sign of a sophisticated user. It's used for hypothetical situations, demands, wishes, or suggestions.
Can you give us an example of the difference it makes?
Sure. A standard sentence might be, it is important that he is present at the meeting. That's grammatically fine, but it sounds like you're just stating a fact.
Okay.
The subjunctive version is, it is important that he be present at the meeting.
Oh, that feels different. It feels more official, more urgent.
It has more authority, doesn't it? It's a command, not an observation. Or, if I were you, not if I was you. Using the subjunctive correctly just adds a layer of polish and formality. It sounds educated.
What about another technique mentioned here? Inversions.
Inversions are all about adding drama and emphasis. They're very literary. So instead of a normal sentence like, I have never seen such a beautiful sunset.
You flip it.
You flip it. Never have I seen such a beautiful sunset. Or instead of, she didn't know it was about to happen, you say, little did she know. It immediately makes your language more dynamic and engaging.
It makes the listener lean in.
Exactly. It's a tool for capturing attention.
And then we have the one that really bends your brain. Mixed conditionals.
Time travel grammar. This is C2 territory right here. This is where you connect a hypothetical situation in the past with its result in the present.
Give us an example.
A simple conditional is all in one time frame, but a mixed conditional connects two, like, if I had taken that job in London 5 years ago, that's the past part, I would be living in a different country now. That's the present result.
If I hadn't stayed up so late last night, I wouldn't feel so tired today.
Perfect. You're linking a past action to a present state. Mastering this allows you to express regret, to speculate, to tell complex stories about cause and effect. It shows a complete command of time and reality within the language.
One last grammar point that I found interesting, the passive voice. Because we're almost always taught to avoid it. Use the active voice. It's stronger.
And in a lot of contexts, like storytelling, that's good advice. But in advanced English, particularly in professional, academic, or political contexts, the passive voice is an essential strategic tool.
How so?
It's all about shifting focus. Let's say a critical mistake was made on a project. In the active voice, you say, my team made a mistake. The focus is on your team. You are assigning blame.
Right. Not always what you want to do.
But if you use the passive voice, you say, a mistake was made.
The actor disappears.
The actor disappears. The focus shifts entirely to the mistake itself. It's a way to be more objective, more diplomatic, or sometimes, yes, a way to avoid pointing fingers. That's not weak grammar. That's sophisticated communication.
It's a political move.
At this level, every grammatical choice can be a political move.
Okay, so we've got the vocabulary and the grammatical structures. Now we have to get all this wonderful information into our brains. Let's talk about input, reading and listening.
This is the fuel for the engine. You can't produce what you haven't first consumed, but it's not enough to just passively consume. We need to engage in deep reading.
Active reading, not just letting the words flow past you.
Right. When you're reading that New York Times article, don't just read for the main idea. Have a pen or a highlighter. Circle words you don't know. But don't just look up their definition. Ask yourself, why did the author choose the word disingenuous instead of just dishonest? What is the subtle difference? What is the author's bias?
The notes suggest that the type of material you read is also really important. A balanced diet.
A very balanced diet is key. You should be reading classic literature. Think George Orwell's 1984 or Harper Lee's To Kill a Mockingbird.
Why classics?
Because they give you the cultural foundation. So many modern idioms and references come from these books. If you don't know what Big Brother means, you're missing a huge piece of cultural conversation.
And for nonfiction?
You need something dense and well-written. The Economist is often cited as the gold standard for business and political English. It's concise, it's packed with advanced vocabulary, and it's formal. If you can read an article from The Economist with ease, you are definitely at a C1, C2 level. For science, something like Scientific American.
And then the guide mentions poetry, which I think might scare some people off.
It's the final boss of reading. But you don't read Shakespeare's sonnets to learn how to talk in the 21st century. You read them as a mental workout. It teaches you to untangle complex metaphors and non-standard sentence structures. After you've wrestled with Shakespeare, a modern business report feels like a children's book.
Let's move to listening, and specifically accents, because the real world does not sound like a language learning CD.
This is such a critical point. Most intermediate learners have gotten very good at understanding one specific type of clear, well-enunciated English. Maybe their American teacher or a British news anchor.
But then they take a business call with someone from rural Scotland or from Texas or from Sydney.
And their comprehension just falls off a cliff. To get to an advanced level, you have to intentionally expose yourself to the beautiful messiness of global English. Listen to podcasts from Australia. Watch TV shows set in Ireland. Seek out the variety.
But someone might argue, why do I need to understand a thick Cockney accent if I'm a software developer?
You're not learning it so you can speak it. You're learning it so you can understand it. Because you never know who you're going to interact with. Maybe the IT guy who comes to fix your server is from East London. If you can't understand him, you failed to connect. It's about adaptability and respect.
And beyond the accent itself, there's the subtext, the tone.
We're back to sarcasm. Your colleague says, "Oh, great, another meeting." If your brain only processes the word great, you've missed 90% of the message. You have to learn to hear the slight drop in pitch, the flat intonation. The real meaning is in the music, not just the lyrics.
There's a specific technique mentioned for this called shadowing. And I want to get into this because it sounds simple, but it feels really, really weird to do.
It feels incredibly strange at first. The idea behind shadowing is you listen to a piece of audio. A TED Talk is perfect for this, and you try to speak along with the speaker just half a second behind them.
It's like being a simultaneous translator for a voice that's already in English.
Exactly, and you're not focusing on understanding every word. You are 100% focused on mimicking the sounds, the rhythm, the intonation, the pauses. You are forcing your mouth, tongue, and vocal cords to move in new ways. It's pure muscle memory training.
How do you know if you're doing it right?
After 10 minutes, your jaw should ache a little. If you're not physically tired, you're not pushing yourself hard enough.
We've filled our brains with all this amazing input. Now it's time to get it out. Let's talk about output, speaking and writing.
This is the moment of truth. Let's start with writing. To move from intermediate to advanced, you need to write with flair.
Flair. That sounds a little vague. What does it mean in practice?
A big part of it is sentence variety. Intermediate writers often fall into a very monotonous rhythm. I went to the conference, I saw a presentation, it was about marketing. All short, simple sentences.
It sounds robotic.
It does. An advanced writer mixes it up. They might use a long, complex sentence full of clauses to provide context, and then follow it with a short, punchy sentence for impact. After 3 days of intense negotiations, during which both sides argued over every comma and semicolon, a deal was finally reached. Long and then short. It creates a rhythm that keeps the reader engaged.
The notes also mentioned using rhetorical devices.
Yes, the tools of persuasion, metaphors. The project became a sinking ship. Alliteration. We need a practical, profitable plan. Anaphora, which is repeating a phrase at the beginning of clauses for emphasis. We will not quit. We will not back down. We will not fail.
I like this rule they mentioned, the run versus sprint rule.
This is a great tip for making your writing more powerful. It's about choosing strong verbs instead of weak verbs modified by adverbs. Intermediate writers often say, he walked quickly.
An advanced writer would say,
he strode, or he hurried, or he jogged.
She looked at the report carefully.
She scrutinized the report.
He ate his dinner fast.
He devoured his dinner. The stronger verb paints a much more vivid picture in a single word. It's more efficient and more impactful.
Let's shift to speaking. The biggest hurdle for most people here isn't the grammar, it's the confidence and the little nuances of pronunciation.
Word stress is a huge one in English. Where you put the emphasis can completely change the meaning of a word.
Give us an example.
Okay. Content with the stress on the first syllable is the stuff inside a box. But content with the stress on the second means you're happy and satisfied.
Or record is a noun, like a vinyl record, but to record something is the verb.
Exactly. Getting these wrong can genuinely cause confusion, and the best way to catch your own mistakes is to record yourself speaking.
Which everyone hates doing.
Everyone hates it. You listen back and you just cringe. You hear your own voice and think, do I really sound like that?
It's a painful process.
It's painful, but it is the most effective feedback you will ever get. Record yourself talking for 2 minutes about your job or a hobby. Then listen back with a notebook. You'll hear every awkward pause, every mispronounced word. It's a direct mirror to your weaknesses.
Speaking of ums and ahs, let's talk about fillers. We all use them.
Native speakers use them all the time, but there are good fillers and bad fillers. Can make you sound hesitant or unprepared.
So what's a better alternative?
You can use thinking phrases that buy you time but make you sound more thoughtful. Phrases like, well, that's an interesting question, or let me see, or to elaborate on that point. They fill the silence, but they project control and intelligence, not confusion.
And finally, a huge skill, register adaptation. Knowing how to change your speech for the situation.
This is what separates the good from the great. It's knowing that in a formal board meeting you might say, I concur with that assessment.
But if you say, I concur to your friend at a bar,
they'll look at you like you've grown a second head. At the bar, you say, yeah, I agree, or totally, or for sure. If you get these mixed up, if you're too informal in a formal setting or too formal in a casual one, it creates a social disconnect. Appropriateness is everything.
Okay, we are in the home stretch now. We've got the skills, the vocabulary, the grammar. Now we need to make it a part of our life. This is all about immersion.
You have to engineer your environment so that using English isn't a choice, it's a necessity.
The no escape method.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
The easiest first step. Change the language on your phone, on your computer, on your social media apps. Force yourself to navigate your digital world in English. When you get a software update notification, you have to understand it.
And what about media?
All in English, no excuses. Watch Netflix, but turn off the subtitles in your own language. At first, you might need English subtitles, but the goal is to get rid of them entirely. Watch a show like The Crown to absorb that very clear upper-class British accent.
And music.
Don't just listen to it, analyze it. Look up the lyrics to a Taylor Swift song and deconstruct her metaphors. Try to rap along with Eminem to train your mouth muscles for speed and rhythm.
The deepest and maybe hardest tip in this section is about the internal monologue.
This is the final frontier of immersion. Most intermediate learners still think in their native language and then translate in their head before they speak.
A two-step process.
Exactly. The goal is to eliminate that translation step. You need to start having your own private thoughts directly in English. Instead of thinking in your language, I wonder what I should have for lunch, you just think, what should I have for lunch?
Narrate your own life inside your head.
Yes. Okay, where did I put my keys? Shoot, I'm going to be late for the bus. When you can think in English, speaking, it becomes automatic.
The guide lays out a sample daily routine because consistency is so much more important than intensity.
100%. Don't try to cram for 5 hours on a Sunday. That leads to burnout. A better plan is something small every day. 15 minutes of vocabulary flashcards on an app like Anki while you drink your morning coffee. 30 minutes of reading a news site during your lunch break. A 20-minute podcast during your commute. You record a 2-minute monologue while you're making dinner. It all adds up to well over an hour a day, but it never feels like a heavy study session.
But even with the best routine, there are pitfalls.
Right.
We need to warn people about them.
The plateau is the biggest one. You will have weeks or even months where you feel like you're not improving at all. It's a normal part of the process.
And what do?
You have to shock the system. Change your routine. If you're bored of reading the news, switch to reading a fantasy novel. If you're tired of business podcasts, watch stand-up comedy. Trick your brain with something new.
And the other big one, perfectionism.
You have to let it go. You will still make mistakes as an advanced speaker. I make mistakes in English, and it's my only language. The goal is effective communication, not flawless perfection.
And finally, don't try to do it all by yourself.
Isolation will kill your motivation. You have to find a community. Join a conversation club. Find a language exchange partner online. Go on a forum on Reddit. You need to interact with other real, live human beings.
This has been, an incredibly comprehensive roadmap. We've covered a huge amount of ground.
We really have, from the psychological mindset of embracing the stumble all the way to the grammatical mechanics of the subjunctive mood.
It's a clear path, but like any map, the territory still has to be walked.
It's a long journey, but it is such a rewarding odyssey. It really does open up new worlds, better career opportunities, and as we said, a healthier, more flexible brain.
Before we wrap up, I want to leave our listeners with one last thought from the material. It's a bit of a mind bender. We've talked about language as a tool to express our thoughts, but there's a theory, it's called the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis, that suggests language actually shapes our thoughts.
Right. The idea that the words you have available to you can limit or expand the very concepts you're capable of thinking about.
So here's the question for you to consider. If you truly master advanced English, if you learn to think with all these nuances, these complex conditionals, these subtle metaphors, does it change who you are? Does thinking in a different, more complex linguistic system actually change the way you perceive reality itself?
It's a fascinating question. Does learning the specific word Schadenfreude make you more aware of that feeling in yourself and others? Does mastering the passive voice make you a more diplomatic person? I think in a small way, it probably does. You build a new version of yourself inside that new language. And that's a beautiful, powerful thing.
A beautiful thing indeed. That is definitely something to think about. Thank you so much for walking us through this deep dive.
It's my absolute pleasure.
And to you, the listener, if you found value in this roadmap, if you are ready to make that jump to C1 or C2, please do not forget to like, share, and subscribe to this YouTube channel. It really helps us continue to create this content. Good luck with the journey.
Hello. Welcome to the Learn English Lab. Today's podcast is How to Organize Your Answer Before You Speak.
It's a pleasure to be here. This is one of those topics that feels a bit like a secret weapon.
A secret weapon? How so?
Well, it's a skill that, once you have it, it really changes the way you move through the world. But until you do, the lack of it can be, genuinely painful.
I think we need to start right there in the pain. Because the source material for this deep dive, it touches on something very specific and I think very universal. We have all been there. You're in some kind of high-stakes conversation. Maybe it's a job interview, it could be a performance review, or maybe you're just, meeting your partner's parents for the first time.
Right, the pressure is on.
The pressure is definitely on, and someone asks you a question, and it's not even a hard question, but your brain it stops.
The static, the freeze.
Yes, exactly. It's like the gears just grind to a halt. You open your mouth, and instead of this golden nugget of wisdom, you get this tumbling stream of consciousness.
You start rambling.
You ramble, you repeat yourself. You can literally see the other person's eyes start to glaze over. And then the conversation ends. You walk out of the room, you're feeling terrible, and 5 minutes later, boom.
The perfect answer appears. Out of nowhere.
The perfect sentence, complete with the right vocabulary, the perfect tone. But it's too late.
The moment's gone.
It's gone.
That experience is so fundamental to the human condition that the French, they actually have a specific idiom for it.
Oh, really?
Yes, they call it l'esprit de l'escalier.
Okay, my French is a little rusty. What does that translate to?
It means staircase wit.
Staircase wit.
Yeah. It captures that specific agonizing frustration of thinking of the perfect comeback or the smartest argument just as you're physically walking down the staircase leaving the building.
That is painfully accurate. But why does that happen? Is it just bad luck? Or is there something, chemical going on upstairs?
It's biology. It's actually a completely predictable physiological response.
So it's not just me?
Not at all.
Yeah.
When you're in that high pressure moment, the interview, the confrontation, your brain perceives a threat.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter that it's just a question. Your amygdala, which is the primitive part of the brain responsible for the fight or flight response, it just lights up.
So it interprets the social pressure as actual danger.
As danger, spot on. So my brain thinks the interviewer is a saber-toothed tiger.
Essentially, yes. And when that amygdala takes over, it hijacks resources from the prefrontal cortex. Okay, and the prefrontal cortex that's the important bit for speaking, right?
It's the CEO of your brain. It's where all the logic, structure, planning, and critically language organization happens. So in the exact moment you need it most, your structure center is effectively offline.
And that explains the rambling. I'm not thinking, I'm operating on pure instinct, which is basically survive this moment.
Direct. Your goal is escape. And then once you leave the room and you hit that staircase, the threat perception just vanishes. The amygdala calms down.
The CEO comes back online.
The prefrontal cortex is back in business. And suddenly, clarity. Staircase wit is just your brain functioning normally again, but with, just terrible timing.
That honestly makes me feel a lot better knowing it's not just me being inadequate. But here's the thing. I look around and I see people who don't seem to have this problem.
Mm-hmm.
You look at certain CEOs or politicians or even just that one friend we all have who's just effortlessly charming. They get asked a tough question and they don't freeze. They speak in paragraphs.
They do. They really do.
And the assumption, I think, for most of us is that they were born that way, that it's some kind of talent. You either have the gift of gab or you don't. And if you don't, well, tough luck.
And that right there is the single most persistent and I think damaging myth in communication.
That it's a gift.
That it's a gift. We treat articulate speaking like it's a personality trait, like having blue eyes or being tall. But the reality, and all the research bears this out, is that organizing your thoughts is a technical skill. A skill. It's no different than learning to write code, learning to play the piano, or, learning to bake a souffle.
So the smooth talkers aren't wizards. They didn't just wake up like that.
They are mechanics. The people you admire, the ones who sound so effortless, they are not winging it, I promise you. They are running internal scripts and frameworks, often subconsciously, that they have practiced thousands and thousands of times. They have a toolkit that they pull from.
I love that idea, a toolkit, because a toolkit is something I can go out and get, or in this case, I can learn.
And that is really the mission of this whole deep dive. We're going to dismantle that myth of natural talent. We're going to hand you the blueprints. By the end of this hour, we want you to be able to move from that rambling mess state to being, persuasive, confident, and sharp.
Okay, so we're talking specific frameworks.
We are. We're going to cover specific frameworks, PrEP, STAR, the rule of three. But maybe more importantly, we're going to discuss how to deploy them when your heart is pounding and your brain wants to shut down.
Before we get to the how, though, can we stick with the why for just a bit longer? Because I think there's a temptation to say, okay, so I ramble a little bit. I'm a chatty person. Is it really that big of a deal?
It is a massive deal. I mean, the stakes are incredibly high. Every single time you answer a question, whether it's, what do you think of this project or tell me about yourself?
That one always gets me.
You are shaping the listener's impression of your entire professional capacity.
That sounds a little harsh.
It is harsh, but it's just how the human brain works. We use heuristics or, mental shortcuts to make judgments. And if your speech is disorganized, the listener subconsciously assumes your thinking is disorganized.
Oh, so if I can't structure a sentence, they assume I can't structure a project.
Accurately. There are generally 4 attributes that communication theory assigns to a high-quality answer. If we were grading your response, we'd be looking for these 4 things.
Okay, let's hear them.
First, it must be clear.
Clear, meaning what exactly?
Meaning the listener understands your point immediately. There's no decoding required on their part. If they have to work to figure out what you mean, you've already lost half the battle.
Okay, clear. That makes sense. What's number 2?
Second is concise. And I want to be a little careful with this word because I think people often misunderstand it.
I'm guessing most people, including me, just assume concise means short, like the shorter the better.
And that's the trap. It doesn't necessarily mean short. Concise means efficient. It means a high signal-to-noise ratio.
Signal to noise, okay.
You could speak for 5 minutes and be perfectly concise if every single sentence adds value. Or you could speak for 1 minute and just be rambling if you're just filling the air with fluff.
I feel personally attacked right now. I am definitely guilty of the fluff.
We all are sometimes.
I get nervous that if I give too short an answer, I'll look like I don't know what I'm talking about, or maybe that I'm being rude or dismissive.
And that's a very common anxiety. We over-explain because we want to prove we did the work, we have the knowledge. But the listener, especially if they're a busy executive, they value time above almost anything else.
Right.
So if you bury your main point under 3 minutes of context, they don't interpret that as you having an abundance of knowledge. They interpret it as a lack of confidence.
Wow. Okay, so concise is really about respecting the listener's bandwidth.
Indeed. The third attribute is persuasive.
So not just stating facts.
Right. A good answer isn't just a data dinner. It has a point of view, and it's backed up by some kind of evidence. And the fourth, and this is a tricky one, is Memorable.
Memorable seems like a really high bar. I mean, I'm just answering a question about a spreadsheet. Does it really need to be memorable?
Well, if you want to get that promotion,
Yes.
think about it. The human brain is a sieve. Research shows we forget something like 50% of what we hear within an hour.
50% in an hour. That's incredible.
It's huge. A structured answer provides these little hooks that can stick in the memory. If you just ramble, the information passes right through that sieve. No hooks.
So we have clear, concise, persuasive, and memorable. Those are the pillars of a good answer. Now let's talk about how we knock those pillars down. What are the specific pitfalls people fall into? We mentioned rambling. That feels like the obvious one.
Rambling is definitely number one. It usually happens because you start speaking before you know how you're going to finish.
Yeah.
You're essentially thinking out loud.
So you're discovering your own opinion at the same time as the person listening to you.
Yes, and that's a very uncomfortable ride for the listener. It's like getting in a car with a driver who has no map and is just hoping they eventually find the destination.
That is a spot-on analogy, and it's exhausting for the passenger. What's another one?
Another major pitfall is repetition. You make a point, but then you feel a little insecure. Maybe I didn't say it smart enough. Maybe they didn't get it, so you say it again in slightly different words than a third time.
I do this. I know I do this. It's like I'm trying to hammer a nail in, but I just keep hitting the wood all around it.
And what that signals to the listener is insecurity. You're basically telling them non-verbally, I don't trust that I made sense the first time.
Which is not a great look.
Not at all.
Mm-hmm.
But there's one trap that I think is even more dangerous than rambling or repetition. I call it the wrong question trap.
The wrong question trap. Is that where you just completely misunderstand what was asked?
Sometimes.
Yeah.
But more often, it's psychological. We get so anxious about what we want to say or, what we prepared to say that we just stop listening to the actual question being asked. We answer the question we wished they had asked.
Oh, I've seen this a million times in job interviews. The interviewer asks, so what would you say is your biggest weakness?
The classic.
And the candidate immediately says, I work too hard, or I'm a perfectionist, which is just a humble brag and completely avoids answering the real question.
Correct. Or a boss asks, is the project on schedule? And the employee answers, well, we've been working really, really hard and the team morale's great.
Deflecting.
Completely. The boss didn't ask about effort. They asked about the schedule. So by answering the wrong question, you're not just being unhelpful, you are signaling that you either aren't listening or you're hiding something.
And I have to imagine the cost of all this isn't just, a bit of awkwardness. It has to have real career consequences.
Immense consequences. There's a lot of research in organizational psychology that shows listeners directly conflate organization with intelligence.
Wait, really?
Absolutely. If you speak clearly and with a logical structure, you are perceived as having a higher IQ, being more trustworthy, and having more leadership potential.
So hold on. I could actually be smarter than the other person, but if they use a better structure in their answer, they will look smarter to the boss.
In the short term. In that crucial meeting, yes. Because in that moment, perception is reality. If you come across as scattered, you're perceived as scattered. If you are architectural in your speech, you're perceived as solid and reliable.
Architectural. I really like that word. It implies a plan, a design. Okay, so we are sold on the why. We don't want to look scattered. We want to look architectural. Let's start building. Before we get to the fancy acronyms like pre-P and STAR, what are the core principles? What's the foundation we're building on?
I'd say the foundation consists of 3 fundamental mental shifts. The very first one is intentionality.
Intentionality.
Most people speak by accident. They react. The phone rings, they pick up, they start talking. An effective speaker, before they speak, they pause and establish a clarity of purpose.
Which means asking yourself, what? What's the question?
The question is, why am I opening my mouth right now? Am I trying to inform? Am I trying to persuade? Am I trying to defend my position? Am I just trying to entertain or build rapport? If you don't know the goal of the play, you can't possibly score.
It sounds so simple, but in the heat of the moment, I can tell you I definitely do not ask that question. I just think, oh no, there's silence. I need to say something.
And that is the exact habit we need to break. Because if you're trying to persuade someone, you need a very different structure than if you're simply trying to inform them. The second principle flows from that. Focus on the listener.
Empathy.
It is essentially empathy. We often suffer from something called the curse of knowledge.
The curse of knowledge, what's that?
It's a cognitive bias where, because you know something inside and out, You unconsciously assume that the other person has all the context and background to understand it.
Or that they even care about the little details as much as you do.
Right, and this leads to the dreaded info dump.
Oh, the info dump.
Yeah.
I have been on the receiving end of that so many times. Someone telling me about the intricacies of their coding problem for 20 minutes straight.
And you're just sitting there thinking, I just asked how your day was. An organized speaker mentally flips the script. They ask, what does this specific listener need to hear from me right now?
Not what do I want to tell them.
That's the key shift. If you're talking to the CFO, they need the financial risk and the bottom line. They do not need the technical specs of the server migration. If you're talking to the lead engineer, it's the opposite.
So read the room, adjust your dial based on your audience.
Correct. It's not about what you want to say. It's about what they need to receive in order to make a decision or understand your point. And the third and final principle is logical order and signposting.
Signposting. We hear this term a lot in public speaking courses.
And for good reason. Think of a conversation as a journey through a dark forest. You are the guide. The listener is the tourist. They've never been here before. If you just start walking randomly, they're going to get lost and, frankly, anxious.
But signposts are the verbal cues that light up the path.
They light up the path. Simple words like first, second, on the other hand, in conclusion.
They seem so basic, but you're saying they have a big impact.
A huge psychological impact. When you say, I have 3 reasons for this decision, the listener's brain actually relaxes. It thinks, okay, great, there are 3, I can track that. It dramatically reduces their cognitive load.
It's like a GPS for the conversation. In 200 meters, we'll get to the second point.
That is a perfect analogy. Without signposts, the listener is spending half their brain power just trying to figure out how your sentences are supposed to connect to each other. With signposts, they can use 100% of that brain power to actually listen to and consider your ideas.
Okay, so the core principles are know your purpose, focus on your listener, and use signposts. That's the foundation. Now let's get into the toolkit. The actual frameworks we can use when the pressure is on. The source material mentions mind mapping as a starting point. Now, when I hear mind mapping, I think of a giant whiteboard with colorful markers and bubbles. But you're saying we can do this in our heads, in real time.
You can? And for complex or multi-part questions, you almost have to. It's a rapid visualization technique. Think of it as taking a mental snapshot of your answer before you begin speaking.
Okay, walk us through it. I'm in a meeting. My boss asks me a really complex 2-part question. My first instinct is to panic. What do I do instead?
First, you pause. Don't speak. Take a breath. In your mind's eye, visualize a blank canvas. In the very center of that canvas, you place the topic, the core of the question they ask.
Got it. The topic.
Branching off from that center, you immediately identify your main idea. What is the one single headline you want them to remember, even if they forget everything else?
Yeah, headline. Key takeaway.
Then you visualize just 2 or 3 supporting points, not 7, not 10. 2 or 3 key things that prove your main idea. And finally, you visualize one last branch, the summary, which is the so what, or the call to action. Can
we try this with a real example? Let's say I ask you, what is the biggest challenge facing our industry right now, and what should our top priority be in response?
Okay, it's a 2-part question. I pause. I might even say, that's a great question. While I say that, my brain is mapping.
Industry challenge and priority.
The rapid pace of AI integration is the challenge. Supporting point 1. There's a huge skills gap in the current workforce. Supporting point 2. The regulatory environment is uncertain and lagging.
Therefore, our top priority must be internal training and upskilling.
So you have that map in your head.
I have that 4-part map. Now, I can open my mouth and speak with structure. I'd say the biggest challenge is undoubtedly the pace of AI integration. This presents a problem for 2 main reasons. First, we have a significant skills gap in our workforce, and second, the regulatory landscape is lagging far behind the technology. Therefore, I believe our absolute top priority has to be a massive investment in internal training.
Wow, that was incredibly tight. It was clear, it answered both parts of the question, and you created that map in 2 or 3 seconds?
Once you get the hang of it, it becomes almost instantaneous. It's not about planning every word. It's about creating a container for your thoughts so they don't just spill out everywhere.
A container for your thoughts. I love that phrasing. And that actually leads us perfectly to the next framework, which you just used in that example, the rule of 3.
Ah, the classic rule of 3. This is ancient. I mean, Aristotle wrote about it. There is something deeply, almost magically psychological about the number 3.
We see it everywhere, don't we?
Everywhere. You have life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, blood, sweat, and tears, beginning, middle, and end.
Goldilocks and the 3 bears, the 3 little pigs, it's in all our stories.
It is, because our brains are pattern-seeking machines. And the number 3 is the smallest number required to create a memorable pattern. 1 is just a point, 2 is a comparison or a line, but 3 is a pattern.
That's fascinating. So what's the psychology there? Why not 4 or 5?
If you give 2 points, it can feel incomplete, like something is missing. If you give 4 or 5 points, it starts to feel like a laundry list, and the listener experiences cognitive overload. They can't hold it all in their head. 3 is the Goldilocks zone. It feels complete, balanced, and is easy to remember.
So how do we apply this to structuring an answer on the fly?
It's a beautifully simple structure. 1, you state your main answer or point directly. 2, you say you have 3 supporting reasons or examples. 3, you list those 3 reasons. 4, you conclude by briefly restating your main point.
It seems almost too simple, but I can immediately see how it would prevent rambling.
It acts as a braking system. That is the key benefit. Most people ramble on and on because they genuinely don't know when to stop. With the rule of 3, once you've delivered point number 3, you know you were done. It's your cue to land the plane.
Let's contrast this. Give me a bad version of an answer where you don't use the rule of 3. Let's use the question from the outline. Why do you enjoy living in this city?
Okay, here's the unstructured, rambling version. Adopts a rambling tone. Oh, well, I really love it here. The food is just great. I mean, the pizza places alone are amazing, and the parks are really nice. I go walking there a lot with my dog. Plus, a lot of my friends live here, which is, that's huge. And the cost of living isn't too bad, although I will say rent is definitely going up. But the public transit is pretty good, which helps. And the weather, well, the summers are nice. The winters are a bit rough.
Okay, please stop. I'm already bored. My eyes glazed over. It just felt like a shopping list that was never, ever going to end.
Right. There's no structure, no hierarchy of importance. Now let's apply the rule of 3 to the same question.
Okay.
I absolutely love living here, and I'd say it boils down to 3 main reasons. First, there's an incredible sense of community and local culture. Second, the access to nature and green spaces is fantastic for my well-being. And third, the culinary scene is truly world-class and always exciting.
Boom. Done. It sounds so much more professional, so much more intentional. It sounds like you have real conviction.
And here's the secret. Structure masquerades as preparation. Even if you just made that up on the spot, you sound like you've given this question serious thought for years.
That is a powerful takeaway right there. Structure masquerades as preparation. Okay, let's move on to the heavyweight champion of business communication, a framework I've heard a lot about, the P-PREP method.
PP is fantastic. It's really the gold standard for expressing an opinion or making a persuasive argument, especially in a professional setting. If you're in a meeting and someone unexpectedly points at you and says, "What's your take on this?" PEP is your safety net.
Okay, break down the acronym for us, PREP.
Certainly, P stands for point. You state your main point or answer immediately, right up front. R is for reason. Why do you believe your point to be true? E is for example. You give specific, concrete piece of evidence or a short story to back it up. And the final P is for point again. You restate your main point to close the loop and make it memorable.
I feel like that first P is where most people struggle. We tend to want to build up to our point. Give all the background and context first, and then reveal the answer at the end, like it's a mystery novel.
You're describing the critical difference between inductive and deductive reasoning.
Okay.
Inductive reasoning is evidence, conclusion. You build a case. Deductive reasoning is conclusion, deductive, evidence. You state your case and then prove it.
In a casual storytelling, inductive is fine, right? It builds suspense.
It does. But in a business context, suspense is the enemy.
So business people hate mystery novels.
They hate not knowing where the car is driving. If you start with all the background and data, they're sitting there getting impatient thinking, okay, but is he going to say yes or no? Is this good news or bad news? They can't even listen to your evidence properly because they're too busy trying to guess your conclusion. PRP forces you to be deductive. You give them the verdict first.
Let's do a role play, a gov one. The question is, should we mandate a return to the office 5 days a week? I want you to give me the bad version first, the inductive, rambling, non-PP one. Okay, here we go. The bad version. Clue's throat adopts a hesitant tone.
Well, that's It's a really complex issue. There are a lot of factors. I've been talking to the team and, some people really miss the cafeteria and the collaboration. But then again, the commute is just terrible for a lot of folks and gas prices are up. And we did see that productivity was actually okay, in some cases even higher during the pandemic. But, company culture is really important, right? So I don't know. It's really hard to say what the right move is.
That was painful to listen to. You just listed a bunch of random pros and cons, but I still have absolutely no idea what your actual opinion is. You're just sitting on the fence.
I give you a lot of noise, but no signal. Now, let's apply PPPP to the exact same question.
Okay, let's hear it.
Adopts a confident tone.
I believe we should not mandate a full 5-day return to the office. Instead, we should officially adopt a structured hybrid model.
The primary reason is that a hybrid model allows us to balance the clear need for in-person collaboration with the equally clear benefits of focused, deep work that many employees find at home.
For instance, our own data from Q3 shows that while our creative brainstorming sessions are 20% more effective in person, individual coding output is 15% higher on remote days.
Therefore, a structured hybrid schedule isn't a compromise. It's a strategy to leverage the best of both worlds for maximum productivity.
The difference is absolutely night and day. It is impossible to misunderstand you in that second version. Even if I disagree, I know exactly what I'm disagreeing with.
And you respect the argument. It's logical. It invites a clean, productive debate. The rambling version just invites more confusion and wastes everyone's time.
Okay, so prep is perfect for opinions and arguments. But what about when someone asks for a story? Those dreaded behavioral interview questions. Tell me about a time when prep feels a bit too rigid and clinical for that.
You are absolutely correct. For storytelling, the framework changes. We switch from prep to the STAR technique.
STAR. S-T-A-R. I feel like many of our listeners might have heard this acronym before, especially if they've prepped for an interview, but maybe they aren't using it to its full potential.
It's often taught, but it is rarely mastered. Let's break it down. S stands for situation. Set the context. Where and when did this happen? Keep it brief. T is for task. What was the specific challenge or your responsibility in that situation? A is for action. What did you specifically do? What steps did you take? And R is for result. What was the outcome? What happened because of your actions?
So where do people usually go wrong with STAR?
2 places, almost every time. First, they spend 80% of their time on the situation. They fall in love with the drama of the story.
Right. Oh, the client was screaming on the phone and it was raining outside and the entire computer system had just crashed and my boss was on vacation in Hawaii.
Exactly. They set this elaborate stage, but then the play never actually starts, and then they rush through the most important part of the entire framework, the action.
And what's the mistake they make there?
They use the royal we. They say things like, so we decided to fix the problem, we held a meeting, and we came up with a new plan.
Why is that a mistake? In a normal work context, isn't it good to be a team player and say we?
In a normal work context, yes. But in a job interview, they are not hiring your team. They are hiring you. If you only say we, the interviewer is left wondering what you actually contributed. Did you lead that meeting and come up with the plan, or did you just sit there taking notes while someone else did all the work?
That's a great point. So you have to switch to I.
You must use I. I analyzed the data. I proposed the new solution. I called the angry client personally. It can feel uncomfortable for people because we're often taught to be modest.
Right, don't brag.
But modesty in an interview is a fast track to rejection. You can and should acknowledge the team's role, but you must focus on your specific individual contribution.
Let's hear a good STAR example in action. The prompt is, tell me about a time you had to manage a crisis.
Okay. Here's a structured STAR response.
In my previous role, our main parts supplier unexpectedly went bankrupt just 2 weeks before a major product launch. Brief, clear, high stakes.
My specific task was to secure a new source for the critical components to ensure we didn't miss our launch date and lose Q4 revenue.
I immediately created a list of 3 potential alternative vendors. I then led the negotiations for emergency contracts with 2 of them, and I personally reorganized the logistics schedule with our warehouse team to accommodate the new expedited shipping routes.
As a result, we launched the product on time, met all of our initial sales goals, and actually ended up saving 5% on material costs with one of the new vendors, which became a long-term partner.
That is such a satisfying story arc. It's lean, there's absolutely no fluff, it has a problem, an action, and a happy, quantifiable ending.
And it clearly positions you as the hero of your own story. You faced a dragon, you swung the sword, you won. That is what an interviewer wants to hear.
So we have prep for opinions and STAR for stories. That covers a huge chunk of professional communication. But I want to pivot back to that biological factor we started with, the nerves.
The amygdala hijack.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because I can know pre-prep and STAR backwards and forwards in theory, but when my heart is pounding and my palms are sweating, sometimes my brain just goes completely blank, that blank stare moment.
The fight, flight, or in this case, freeze response, it shuts down that prefrontal cortex, which is exactly where you store your knowledge of prep and STAR.
So what strategies can we use to hack that response? How do we buy ourselves just enough time to get one of these frameworks up and running?
This is critical. One of the most effective tactics is a two-part move, bridging and clarifying.
Okay, how does that work?
So let's say you get a question and your mind goes blank. You have no idea what the answer is, or you just need a moment to find it. Do not just stare into space. First, you clarify the question.
By repeating it back.
By paraphrasing it back to them. Something like, just to make sure I understand correctly, you're asking about the marketing budget for Q3, specifically regarding our social media spend.
Ah, okay. That buys you, what, 5 or 6 seconds?
It buys you 5 crucial seconds, but more importantly, it does something in your brain. It forces your logical brain to engage with the verbal content of the question, which helps to dampen the emotional panic response. You are forcing the CEO to get back online.
Okay, so that's clarifying. What's the bridge?
The bridge is a phrase that connects the difficult question you were asked to a related topic that you are more comfortable and prepared to talk about. A classic bridge is, that's a very interesting question about the budget. What I think is really the core issue here is our overall return on investment.
Ah, so you're steering the conversation. Politicians are masters at this, almost too good at it.
They are. And you don't want to be evasive or dishonest, but bridging allows you to gracefully pivot from a gotcha question to your safe ground, where you might have a structured answer ready to go.
Another thing you mentioned in the outline is something I find really difficult. The power of the pause. I feel like this is the hardest piece of advice to actually follow, because silence in a conversation feels terrifying.
It feels like a void, like a failure. In our own heads, a 3-second pause feels like an hour of dead air. We think the audience is judging us, thinking we've forgotten our own name.
Yes, exactly that.
But we need to completely reframe how we think about silence. Think about it this way. In any room, who is it that rushes?
The junior person.
Yeah.
The intern. The person who's anxious and trying to prove they belong there.
Correct. The junior person rushes because they feel their time isn't valuable. They feel like they need to get the answer out as fast as possible before they get interrupted. Now, who pauses?
CEO. The judge. The expert on stage.
Right. They know the room will wait for them. Silence is actually a powerful status signal. When you pause deliberately, you are subconsciously signaling to everyone, I am confident enough to take up space and time to formulate a thoughtful answer.
So instead of panicking in the silence, you lean into it.
You own it. When you get a tough question, take a visible breath. Look thoughtful, and you can even say the magic words. That is a great question. Let me think about that for a moment.
Let me think for a moment. It's such a simple phrase, but it feels like it gives you permission to actually breathe and let your brain work.
And the listener doesn't interpret it as stupidity. They interpret it as thoughtfulness. They think, wow, he's really considering my question seriously. It builds respect.
What about chunking? How is that different from, say, the rule of 3?
It's related, but it's more of a mental process. Chunking is the act of breaking down a very complex topic into smaller, bite-sized pieces before you speak. If you have to explain a complex engineering process, for example, don't just start reciting the technical manual from memory.
Which would be a total info dump.
A total info dump. Instead, you chunk it. You say, to understand this process, you need to know about its 3 main phases. First, there's the design phase. Second is the build phase. And finally, we have the test phase. You speak in headlines.
And speaking in headlines not only helps a listener follow along, but it also helps you stay on track.
It absolutely does. It becomes your own internal map. If you know you're currently in the design phase chunk of your answer, you won't accidentally start rambling about something from the test phase. It keeps both you and your listener oriented.
And finally, under this section on nerves, we have active listening, which feels like it brings us full circle back to that idea of empathy.
It does. Because you cannot organize a brilliant answer to a question you didn't fully hear. When we get nervous, we tend to focus on our own internal monologue, that frantic voice saying, oh God, everyone is looking at me. Do I have spinach in my teeth? What am I going to say next?
The voice of panic.
Exactly. You need to consciously silence that voice and focus 100% of your attention on the person who is asking the question. Listen to their words, their tone, what's behind their question.
And in a way, that takes the pressure off you. It's not about you anymore, it's about them.
Yes, it shifts the spotlight. And remember to aim for clear and good, not flawless and perfect. Perfectionism is the enemy of fluency. If you are listening with genuine intent, your brain will naturally start to form a relevant response based on what is being said rather than what you fear.
Let's zoom out a bit. We've got the theory, we've got these great frameworks, we've got the panic hacks. How does this all apply to the real world? Let's look at some specific scenarios.
Let's start with the place this matters most for many people, the workplace, specifically meetings. We have all been in that meeting where someone is asked for a simple update and they proceed to talk for 5 minutes, thinking out loud.
And at the end of it, everyone in the room is actually more confused than when they started. It's the worst. It just drains all the energy out of the room.
It's an energy vampire. So instead, apply the strategy. 1, you can thank the previous speaker. That's a valuable point, Sarah. 2, you structure your response. I have 2 thoughts on that. 3, you use evidence or data shows. 4, you summarize. So in short, I support this move. It just sounds so much more authoritative.
It commands respect. What about presentations, especially that scary Q&A session at the end?
For Q&A, here's a huge tactical advantage. Always repeat the audience member's question out loud.
Why is that so important?
It serves 2 critical functions. 1, it ensures that everyone else in the room who might not have heard the question knows what you're talking about. But 2, and this is the secret weapon part, it buys you 5 to 10 seconds to structure your answer using PP.
So while you're repeating the question, your brain is already working on the answer.
It's stealthy preparation. The question is this model scalable? You say to the audience, the question is a very important one. Is this model scalable? And in those few seconds, you're thinking, point, reason, example, point. Then you can launch into, yes, it is absolutely scalable for 2 key reasons.
That's brilliant. What about outside of work? Like difficult conversations with family or partners? This is high stakes in a totally different way. Emotion is high, logic is low.
When emotion is high, logic usually goes completely out the window. Structure can actually be a tool to de-escalate the situation.
How so?
If you're in an argument, instead of just reacting emotionally, you can try to impose a structure. You could say, okay, wait, I want to talk about X. Here's my experience of what happened. Can you tell me how you see it? It creates a container for the conflict rather than just a chaotic free-for-all.
It prevents that classic thing where you start arguing about who is supposed to take out the trash, and suddenly you're somehow arguing about something your mother-in-law said 5 years ago at Thanksgiving.
Exactly. That is rambling in an argument context. Structure keeps you on the designated topic. We are talking about the trash. Here is my point about the trash.
And this even applies to casual socializing. We all have that one friend who tells a story that just never ends.
Don't be that friend. Be succinct. Use a summary signpost. To make a long story short, it was a wild trip. It makes you a better conversationalist because you aren't dominating all the airtime. You're leaving space for others.
I want to look at some expert voices or, celebrity examples. Who out there does this really, really well?
Well, Barack Obama is a classic case study for the rule of 3. If you go back and watch his speeches or his debate performances, he almost always says there are 3 things we need to consider. Or we can look at this in 3 ways.
And it makes him sound so logical and composed. It feels very steady. It has a certain cadence to it.
It does.
Yeah.
Then you have someone like Oprah Winfrey. She is an absolute master of the listener-focused principle. She listens fully. You can see her physically taking it all in. And then she responds with a very clear point, but it's often anchored in a relatable story or an emotion. She connects the dots for her audience in a powerful way.
She validates the person speaking, she summarizes their point, and then she adds her own insight. It really is a beautiful dance to watch.
And finally, if you watch top CEOs during their quarterly earnings calls with Wall Street analysts, they are using PRP constantly and with surgical precision. They clarify assumptions, they use hard numbers as their evidence, and they summarize their main point frequently. They know that billions of dollars of stock value can depend on them being crystal clear.
So if it's good enough for Obama, Oprah, and the Fortune 500, it's definitely good enough for us. But here's the rub. This sounds like a lot to remember. I'm feeling really motivated right now listening to this, but I'm worried that tomorrow, in a real meeting, I might forget it all. how do we actually build the habit?
That's the most important question, because this is a muscle. You cannot read a book about how to do push-ups and expect to get strong. You have to actually do the push-ups.
So what's the first exercise?
The first step is simple reflection. After a conversation later today, just take 30 seconds and ask yourself, where in that chat did I ramble, or did I actually answer the question they asked me? Just a quick mental audit.
Start building awareness.
Exactly. Then, and I'll admit this is the painful one, record and review.
No one, and I mean no one, likes hearing the sound of their own voice.
I know, it can be excruciating, but it is the single fastest way to improve. Use the voice memo app on your phone. Record yourself answering a common mock interview question. Then listen to it back. You will immediately hear the ums, the ahs, the rambling sentences. You'll hear exactly where you lost the structure.
It's like game tape for athletes. They have to watch their mistakes to get better. Speakers should too.
Indeed. And finally, and this is the one you can do anytime, practice aloud. You can do this completely alone. You don't need an audience. While you're driving to work or doing the dishes, ask yourself a random question. What's my favorite movie and why?
Okay.
Then answer it out loud using PRP.
My favorite movie is The Matrix.
Because it completely revolutionized science fiction aesthetics and storytelling.
I mean, those bullet time scenes create a visual language that movies are still using today.
That's why it's my all-time favorite.
Do that for trivial, low-stakes things.
So you're building the neural pathways when the pressure is low, so that when the pressure is high, that pathway is already paved and easy to follow.
That's a perfect way to put it. It becomes muscle memory.
Yeah.
So when the CEO turns to you in the boardroom and asks you a question, you don't have to panic and think, wait, what does P stand for again? Your brain just instinctively snaps into the PERP structure.
And there are other tools out there too, right? Besides just our brains. Of course. Simple things like using a notebook or a mind map app to prep your thoughts before a big meeting can be huge. There are also apps like Ori or Speechify that can analyze your speech patterns. And I'd say watching TED Talks is fantastic homework. But don't just watch for the content, watch for the structure. See if you can spot the signposts, the rule of three, the PRP method in action.
That's actually a fun game. Spot the PRP.
It completely changes how you listen to everyone, from news anchors to your own friends.
We have covered a massive amount of ground today. This has been incredible. I want to try and bring it all together for our listeners. If someone takes away just the core toolkit from this deep dive, what is it? What are the essential steps?
The summary, the emergency cheat sheet is this. 1. Pause. First and foremost, do not rush. The silence is your friend, not your enemy. 2. Identify the main point. Ask yourself, what is the one single thing I want this person to remember? 2. Identify the main point. Ask yourself. 3. Select a structure. Is this an opinion? Use PRP. Is it a story? Use STAR. Is it a list? Use the rule of 3. 2. Identify the main point. Ask yourself. 4. And after you're done, check for understanding. A simple, does that answer your question, shows confidence and ensures you are clear.
4 simple steps. It sounds so manageable when you put it like that. Simple steps, but with a profound impact.
They really do. And I'll leave you with this one final thought. We often think that power in a room comes from volume, from speaking loudly or speaking first or interrupting. But true authority, true influence, comes from architecture. The next time you're asked a tough question, don't rush to fill the silence. Take that pause, structure your thought, and just see how differently people look at you when you speak with architecture rather than just with noise. Speak with architecture. I love that. That is a fantastic note to end on. If you found this useful, please remember to like, share, and subscribe to this YouTube channel. It really helps us keep unpacking these important topics for you.
Absolutely. Now go out there and practice those frameworks. You've got this.
Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.